Hi there, it's time to get up to scratch. Today, we're going to look at the variable blocks, the orange colored blocks over here. We'll also have a quick look at the list blocks, which you can't really see, but you might notice this button down here that says Make a List. Variables in Scratch can either be strings, so those are letters, or they can be numbers. Both can be quite useful at making your program interactive and effective. Let's discuss what these blocks do, and then I'll show you a few examples of how they can be used. Let's begin. When you start a new Scratch program, you only have one variable, called myVariable, up here. If you want to see the current value of this, you can just tick the box right there, and you'll notice in the stage, it is visible now. So it is myVariable and the value is 0. I can change how this display looks by right-clicking, and normal readout is the default. If I make it a large readout, it is just the number or the letters, and I can also make it a slider. I can slide this value like up all the way to 100. Now, if I want that slider to be more than 100, I can actually change the slider range by clicking there and put in the minimum value and the maximum value. We're just going to leave that and hide it for the time being. So what we can do with variables most simply is that we can change them and we can hold values in them. Imagine them as a box where we can put something in it and save it for later and then access it if we want. So for example, if at the beginning of my program, when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to have my variable set to 0. Now, if you make a bunch of other variables, they will be down here and you can rename the variable. We'll discuss about variable names in a few moments. What I can do then is perhaps I will use a repeat block. And this repeat block will repeat 10 times. And I'm going to change my variable by 1 each time. And what I'll do each time the variable changes, I will get the cat to say what the variable is. Now, I don't want it to save it for 2 seconds because that's going to take 20 seconds. If I put it like that, it will only last for 10. So to get my cat to say the variable, I can just drag that circular block into the say block, and let's see how this works. You can see that the variable is going up and the cat is saying it each time. So we can actually do some pretty interesting things with that. And we could set our variable to say 10. And rather than change the variable by 1, we could have it go down by 1. And instead of saying it, we can put a control block in for a wait block. And we can display the variable. And let's put it in the large readout format. So when I play the program like this and press the green flag, it is a timer. So we can time a game or something. See, what I can also do is put an event in that says when this sprite is clicked, that we're going to create a new variable. So to make a variable, I'm going to name this score. And you can make this variable for all the sprites or this sprite specifically. Sometimes you might want to make it for sprite specifically because you want similar names, but it's probably easiest to make them global variables. The great thing is I can drag this where I want it to be. And when this sprite is clicked, we're going to change not my variable, but the score variable by 1. And a really important thing that we need to do is, as we use with the motion blocks, the looks blocks, we need to set our program up the way we want it. So at the beginning, we're going to set the score to 0. So often when you see programs that have been well developed, you'll see a lot of these set this variable, move this sprite there, move that sprite there. It's all just make sure that your program runs the same each time. So when I press this, I've got 10 seconds to click this cat as many times as I want. However, notice that it keeps on going. So to make this game interesting, or actually probably more effective, I probably want to stop all once the timer is up. Another thing that I should talk about is the naming of these variables. So we've named one score, which makes really sense, but my variable doesn't actually make sense. So if I right click this, I can rename the variable, and I'm going to name that timer. Now, different programming languages have different conventions and ways how you're supposed to name things. Some things will use, if there's multiple words, each word will start with a capital except for the first word. Sometimes they'll use underscore. It's probably the best advice I can give you with Scratch is just name your variable something that makes sense and something that is simple. Now, these last two blocks are fairly straightforward. You might not want to see the timer when the time is up. So once the timer is up, we don't want to do show. I put that in the wrong spot. So we'll need to show the variable after we set it to what we want it to set. And at the end, we can hide it. Lists are very similar to variables, except you can have multiple values in them. So this might be a way to keep track of high scores. It might be a way of keeping track of people who have used your program. You could also do some really neat stuff by keeping a list of words and getting people to input into them. So to start, you need a new list name. So I'm going to put names. And you see how it opens up just like the variable there, and it's got a list, and it's telling you the length as well. So there's a lot more blocks than the variable blocks. I can add things to my list. So if I click there, I'm going to add thing. And if I click that again, the list won't disappear. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to add a thing 1 there, and then a thing 2. It makes me think of Dr. Seuss a little bit, and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to be clever with variables, you can do some nifty things with that. I can make a new variable of things, and at the beginning of my program, I'm going to set things to, I guess I already got things 3 there, so I'll set it to 4. And then I'm going to add a control loop and add 10 times there. And instead of adding thing 3, I'll use those operator blocks, the join block that we talked about there, and I'll use thing, and I'll use the things variable. So it should start the first time to add, I think it should be up to 13 or 12. So see now, I've made a mistake there. And that's great because I can actually, let's actually just delete all of names and make that a little bit better. So if I run that, names is now empty, which you might want to use to clear list, maybe at the beginning of a game. Now let's do this properly this time. What I didn't do is I didn't add on to the variable each loop. So I need to add that and then change not the score, but change the things. So this is going to add thing 1 to thing 10. So now we've got a list that we can play around with. So let's get rid of that. We have talked about adding things. We can delete something. So maybe we want to delete the 5th entry. So that will delete the 5th entry, thing 5, so we can see that now that's gone. So you can delete parts of that, and you can put a variable or any other number in there. You could, as we saw before, you delete all of names. Now, we deleted thing 5, so let's actually add thing 5 back at. We want it to be in 5 of names, and when I press the green flag, we've got thing 5 there, and thing 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 have all been bumped down. So that doesn't delete anything. Now, I accidentally pressed that again. So let's replace that. So item 6 right there is the repeat. So replace item 6 of names with my mistake. And see, now that that's been replaced, everything else stays the same. Nothing has been moved. Now I can extract anything up there that I want. So let's use the say block to read things on this list. And we can just pull in any of these 3 things. So I can figure out what item 7 is, and the cat will say item 7 is thing 6, because remember, we made that mistake between thing 5 and thing 6. Again, you could do what I did with the making of the list. You could run through things so the cat could actually say all of the things. So we could actually even look for what is item number of my mistake. You'd have to type that in exactly, and it will give me 6. So then what I could do is I could delete item 6. And let's see what it... I think I may have deleted the wrong one. Probably pressed a few too many buttons there. So you need to be careful with this and make sure that when you're creating these lists and manipulating them, that you are doing so in a way that you don't lose things that you want to keep. Let's pull the delete off of there. We can also find out the length of a list. So maybe, for example, you get users to put in a bunch of their username when you play it, and you never delete that. So maybe you want to find out, well, okay, so how many people have actually played my game? So you can get that number, the length of names, and it will say there's 9 things in my list right now. So notice these are all strings. Even though they have numbers in them, any letter automatically makes it a string. We've also got some of the diamond blocks here. So we could use the if then block to check to see if names contains thing 6. And when we do this program, it doesn't contain thing 6, so it doesn't run that. It might be actually probably better to use the if then else block, and if it's wrong, it doesn't. But if we look for thing 7, it says hello because it does contain that. So remember, these diamond shaped blocks return true or false, and if the item is true, then that bit runs. In the else block, the else only runs if the first part isn't true. And just like the variables, we've got the 2 blocks where we could show and hide the list. So I can hide the list. And that's probably good for most programs, but maybe at some point you want to show, hey, these are the people who have played the game, so you can show it and they can scroll down. That's all the variable and list blocks. They allow you to use numbers and strings in your program, to save them and manipulate them. By now, you are hopefully familiar with all the basic blocks in Scratch. However, with that knowledge, you're only scratching the surface, pun intended. There are many tips and tricks that I haven't gone over in my examples. The best thing for you to do now is to have a play around with what you've learned. Try new things and combinations of blocks and see what you can do. In the future, there will be some videos showing you some of the other features of Scratch, like My Blocks, the backpack, and some of the special blocks you can add on. I'll look at adding some tips and tricks as well. Until then, happy programming! Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching!